Ted Smith, class of 83.
And Jim Resch, class of 73.
Bob Bonham, class of 71.
Steve Cohn, class of 88.
George Alter, class of 71.
Josh Bowling, class of '08.
John Brink, class of 69.
Nicholas A. DiVirgilio, class of 1977.
Chet Tippin, class 2006.
Bill Allen, class of 79.
Mike Crump, class of 2006.
So I have a joining the octet story. I was starring in The Music Man my freshman year as Winthrop Peru, and was able to hit some pretty high notes at that time. I had no idea what I was getting into. If I had known, I might have thought twice about it, but when I got to the practices, it was amazing, and did it for 4 years and loved it.
I was in ninth grade, and I'd already been in the choir, and I was going to join the glee club. And I remember I was on the swim team then, and I'm there with some upperclassmen, and they're kind of going, "Who are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm George Alter." And what do you do? "Well, I'm in the octet. I'm in the octet."
Are you new boy?
And yeah, exactly. And they're sitting there poking at me like that. And Bruce Johnson, who you guys might remember, an excellent swimmer, he goes, "We're going to have to call you Tweety Bird." So the rest of the year, my price for getting in the octet as a ninth grader was being referred to as Tweety Bird. That's it.
I come from a musical family. My dad was an opera singer and was still singing at the times, so I had already singing was in my life already. And I don't think there was a formal audition or anything, because on my application for Mercersburg, I just put down all these operas that I was in, right? And I'm sure, my voice had already changed. I was able to make it through the first tenor that first year, and it was while I was trying to sing first tenor that I learned about falsetto. I'd never heard about what falsetto was because I came from the opera world, right, where everything is full voice. And so I learned about soprano, but then the next year I was put down to second base with Bill, and I was much happier. So that's how I got into the octet.
I remember, just on the open house, before I even started coming to Mercersburg, the octet was performing there, and I was just kind of flabbergasted and blown away by the harmonies. So I come to Mercersburg, I try out my freshman year, I do not even get a callback, but then the year after I made it in, and just life-changing experience.
Perseverance.
That really is like the experience, right? Because I was the same way, right? I came to Mercersburg, I'd been singing all my life, right? That's what I did, right? That was my only real extracurricular outside of tennis, which I played badly, which I didn't play at Mercersburg. For whatever reason, but like freshman year, I hear about this octet thing. I was already in chorale, doing the theater stuff as well, and they're like, "Okay, let me try out with something." I think I tried out with like Danny Boy or like some folk song, because I hadn't heard the octet perform yet, so I had no conception like what kind of singing group it was, and like, you know what? Try again next year, bud. I'm like, no, what? That's fine. I got other stuff. I'm a freshman. I got time, and. Tried again the next year, and then I think I kept trying to steal solos pretty much every year I was in after that. Just because it was so much fun, right? That sense of building harmony with a small group is hard to find anywhere else.
Yeah, it is. Sure.
Yeah. Four-part male harmony. And I've said this to you guys at every reunion we come back to. I don't really care if we get up on stage and sing for everybody. The magic to me is the first time we're in the room and we're banging out something that's four-part harmony, and then we do it, and you just hear the four-part. Half the time you're holding notes at the end just because the chord is so nice. We are all four-part harmony junkies.
I think for me, one of the things that I loved about it was also, there's a real fellowship among octet members, and it stretches across the decades, and we've gotten to know each other from the reunions and have built a bond, but that it's a bond through the music, through common music, but also through a common experience, which for me was we were out late, at least in my era, we were out at, I guess, 9 o'clock at night when everyone else was in the dorms, and we were doing a thing that was like our special private thing, and we worked extremely hard at it. It was like athletes, really trying to nail it, the dynamics, the attacks, just everything, the crescendos, and it had to be perfect. And we had a director who was very demanding and could be very, very difficult. We all have some very funny stories about that, but there was a genuine sense of satisfaction when you would finally nail it, when you would get it, and it was perfect. And it just, it's a feeling that I don't know that and this is not to sound too nostalgic, but I don't know that I've recaptured that same feeling in any other area of my life since. That feeling of working in a tight, cohesive group and just really, absolutely everyone is spot on. And then when you finished that song, you'd look at each other and you knew that what you had done together was special, you know.
And the harder the arrangement, the more satisfaction you
Yes.
got the first time you nailed
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Well, it's got anything that's more complicated in life. When you accomplish that goal, you're so much happier that you took it on
Yeah,
and did it.
yeah.
This weekend was the first time that I'd really sung since high school, and I remember that first rehearsal that we were doing yesterday, and there were just a few moments where like everything really clicked, and yeah, just that sense of satisfaction and
The sound.
invigoration, I guess, that
Yeah.
you get from when you hear it and you know it's right.
It's not just a personality thing, because personality like really doesn't describe the breadth of individuals that you encounter from octets through the years, right?
Yeah, right.
Whether it's within the octet generation you sang, or like meeting with alumni, right, from many decades before the three of us.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Old guys.
Yeah, well, it's
can
not your
take
fault that you weren't alive in the '60s when all the songs we sang like were written. But there's sort of like a hooliganery, like a
Oh, yeah.
benign hooliganery, I
Yeah.
would say, that is sort of the heart of the octet.
Sure.
We're like,
Hooligan.
one, we sing for ourselves. Like, as much as we love performing and the audience loving it,
Right.
and the adulation, because we are a little bit narcissistic, I feel like, because we like to be recognized for all the hard work we do on our own. Like, if we went to a concert, or if we, like, when we sang at the dining hall, right? If we'd gone up and everyone had ignored us, but we just loved the harmonies we were doing,
Right.
having a good time.
Right, we might
wouldn't
not have
care.
cared.
Right? Like that, the heart of it really is like we do it for the music, not necessarily for the audience. It's just a very happy byproduct that
Yeah.
because we care so much, the audience gets to enjoy it too.
Yeah, right.
Sure.
Yeah, that's fun.
Some of them actually do enjoy it.
Yeah, right. Some of them actually do.
And occasionally, like what I'm really hoping for, like after this weekend, is that some of the students here are like, oh, that was actually,
Yeah.
that looked like fun.
Yeah.
I want to try
that's-
and do that.
Yeah, that's really why we're doing it. We're doing it to generate interest in the singing groups. I think people don't know what they're missing. And so that's one of, I thought we all felt collectively that we were, doing it, one for the Gipper kind of thing, to try to, generate an enthusiasm and how much fun it could be, along with everything else that the students have to do while they're here.
Well, this sort of facts came up only after I signed on. I was looking forward to doing it just because it was fun.
We had people tripping over, fighting over each other to try to get into the octet. And people who tried out 4 years in a row and didn't get it,
Yeah, and also, I think the thing that you have to remember too is that the octet would change depending who was in the group.
Right.
There would be some years when the octet was fabulous, there would be some years where it was mediocre. But you didn't stop it. You used the talent that you had, and then you fit the songs and the pieces around the talent, okay? And I think that might be missing a little bit. I think, there might be too much, quest for perfection musically. And what we have all been bound here by is that regardless of what your talent is, you fit in, and part of the joys and what the people with probably, mediocre or not mediocre, but a different level of talent, when they started the octet, later on in their lives, they look back on it and they say, wow, I couldn't even sing before I came to the octet. I can sing, and look what I accomplished with a bunch of guys, right? And I think that there's kind of this quest for perfection, which is unattainable. And you just got to go with what you have and make it work. They've got to use the talent that they have to make it work, right? Otherwise, you're not going to have any singing groups at all. And, what's the fun in that?
I just say that. Like talking with the students who are currently members, like it sounds like they love it just as much as we do. Right.
They do.
I got
Right.
that sense.
The talent that we've seen on both the Regalia side, the octet, for the students who are still here, like, still, like, that tradition at least is still, like, the talent and how much they love singing is still very impressive.
Yeah.
Right.
And some people are natural born entertainers that might not be incredible singers.
Who would that be?
Somebody like that. By the way, this is the 75th anniversary of the Octet, which
That's
everyone knows.
right.
And a number of
Yes.
us have been to numerous Octet reunions through the years.
Should have put that up
One of the
front.
very special ones was in 2001. That current Octet that year was made up of all seniors, and that was an excellent Octet. We came back, we did 8 or 10 numbers, most of them with the current Octet, but we did some difficult things and nailed them. We did Hearts Were Full of Spring at that one, but the one we really nailed, and I have the CD, I listen to it all the time, the Whiff and Poof song. And at the end of it, our director, who was noted for the you can hear him, if you turn the sound up right at the end, you can hear him say, beautiful. He didn't say that very often, especially in a live performance. But the other special thing about that reunion, there was a gentleman there who was in the very first Octet, and he sang with us, and he had another guy who was in the second year of that, 1948. So we had a 47er and a 48er at an Octet reunion, and talk about giving you the history and the feeling and how long it's been around. And if you've researched the Octet before it was the Octet, at the turn of the century, they were doing minstrel stuff. There are pictures, and these guys, 5 of them have banjos, and they're doing music of that time. I mean, the history almost goes back further than the 75 years at this institution, because they did have smaller male groups.
Right.
And
And they had a drum and stuff.
God, an
George
acapella
knows
different
that
instruments?
because he took the pictures of the guys with the band.
Yeah.
But,
So Bob, how did you get into the Octet?
So, it was interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
Please,
interesting. Well, yeah. So you're right. Not everything was all music, and it had to do a little bit with how people interacted with each other. And George and I had this thing going for 4 years in Mercersburg, where we were just doing stuff, crazy stuff, right? And so I think there's a little pity on me, almost a little bit, like, he's such a nice guy, but he can't sing that part that well. And yeah, so I think I got into the Octet because it was going to fit in with these people, and I think history showed that.
And he had been in 3 choirs and 3 glee clubs, and was in 4 choirs, 4 glee clubs, and only 1 Octet. He could sing a little.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I just want everybody
There
to
was
know.
enough. Yeah.
I would probably claim to have the least talent on the stage by a long shot when it comes to vocal singing.
I don't think that's not true.
But I will also say,
That is a lie.
I
That
will
is a
also
lie.
say that I was first introduced to the Octet when I was 5, because my father taught here, and we had a Friday evening Octet concert on the 88 slab outside the dining room, and it was Bob and George's group, and they sang a great knockoff of a Beach Boy tune, who, I know they didn't write it, but Beach Boy song, Little Old Lady from Pasadena. And I forget if Derek Hamilton or Dave Alexander had the solo, but I was so entranced as a 5-year-old listening to that solo that I was like, I'm gonna do that. And when I finally got the tryout for the Octet as a 9th grader, I was definitely a ways down on the list in terms of people who should be trying out for the Octet. But the short of it was, I still have in a folder over here, the posting downstairs outside of the rehearsal room of that Octet, because I made the list. And it was one of the proudest days of my life.
I
So-
get that.
That's great.
We had some members who definitely were had just some gifts. There's no doubt. We would occasionally have somebody, and I'm sure most of the Octets had that. We had somebody who, and we've had at least, a couple of folks who have gone on and done professional work, and we should talk about that, because that's an important thing. I think, though, to your point, I would put it this way. I don't know what it's like for the guys today, but we were there when I said this before, we were very serious about what we were doing. We clowned around a lot, but we were very, very serious.
When you're in a group like this, I don't care how much talent you have or how much talent you don't have, you have to learn how to listen to each other. You have to learn how to blend with each other, right? It's not a solo endeavor.
Right.
Right? And that, yeah, especially with a cappella, where you don't have somebody on the piano, it's you know, unaccompanied. So that also trains the ear. But the challenge is to bring different levels of talent into one together, okay? No matter what the level of talent is. You can't all get Juilliard graduates into the octet, right? We're too young. So, I mean, you're just not gonna get it, right? But what you are gonna get is that you are gonna get a diverse group of people who have to learn how to work with each other. And where is that more important than today?
And have
Yeah.
fun.
The part you said where you learn to listen to each other and little things that really aren't musical. I remember times we were doing something and we'd come in and we would be told the basses are too brassy or the tenors are a little shrill.
Or sharp.
Or sharp. And you had tendency to sharp sometimes.
Sure.
Weather conditions, well, usually you'd flat with the weather conditions, but that kind of thing always played into it totally.
Totally. I've sung in other choral groups since the octet, and the hardest thing that the director has for anybody in any choral group, there's one director that said, if you can't hear the other parts while you're singing, then you're singing too loud. Right? Okay, that, and where did you learn that? You learned it, where I learned it was from the octet, right? If you cannot hear the other parts while you are singing, then you are singing too loud, right? But it then tunes your ear to the harmonies, to what they're supposed to hear, to what is how your note fits into the harmony, right?
Right.
Otherwise, you stand out like a sore thumb, right?
I mean,
Because
that
you're
even
singing-
came today.
Yeah.
I was standing next to the gentleman who was the tall guy, back row with me. Was Jack his name?
Jay.
Jay.
Jay, yeah.
And exactly what you're saying, I realized I'm too loud because I'm not really hearing him.
There
well
you
enough.
go.
And
There
I
you go.
modulated myself down, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I could hear him better. And of course, I was also hearing that he was doing it correctly.
Right.
You know, so
Right.
that helped me there too, you know what I mean?
Right.
And but it was tuning myself in these people that are right next to me.
And
Right.
To build on that, in my 4 years in the octet, I only got to do one solo, and it was Little Old Lady from Pasadena.
Yeah.
Which is obvious.
Right.
And the only reason I got to do it is because I begged.
Right.
I didn't have a solo voice. Nobody wants to necessarily hear me sing. But I don't miss notes.
Right.
And as part of the teamwork, I can get the note to somebody who can really sing it, like Bill Allen, and make sure that he's going to be on the right note so that the group can stay together and have the thing in tune.
Especially in the 60s and probably all through the 70s and some of the 80s, we were purposely presented in many occasions with challenging arrangements. And you would have chords that would naturally, chords usually resolve from the outside, but Hearts Were Full of Spring, for example, there are all those chords that resolve between the baritones and the second tenors, and they're not used to that,
Right.
and it doesn't feel comfortable. But when you get it, because it's so challenging,
Who
and
spelled that?
and that's, you know, when you first get it, that's when you realize what a beautiful arrangement.
Right.
You
Yeah,
know?
right.
But it's only then,
And again,
after the
it's-
torture, after the welts,
And it's
the
about
blood.
blending, it's
The
about
other-
blending together.
The other big challenge too, it was we had a director who really emphasized dynamics and had a lot of idiosyncrasies. I don't know how else to put it, but we all still know those things, like the way that you attack at a certain spot, whatever it was, like the crescendos and all that stuff. He was very demanding and expected it just so, and I don't say that, I'm not trying to say that to say he was like a tough guy, or I think we all had good relationships with him, but it had to be exactly that way, and it meant, and that's a different kind of listening. You can harmonize, but do you know how to really express that piece?
Now that's a good point, Steve, and I'll tell you why. Because then I started a group in college based on the music from Mercersburg, okay? And one of the differences between a college group and a high school group is that in college you are self-governing, right? There's no mentor there, okay? And what happens is that the focus in college groups tends to diffuse. because you have so many people trying to one-up each other, and who's going to be the main dog, who's going to be the boss. Unless you have somebody who can play the piano and is really talented, who takes over the rehearsal, there is this kind of a jockeying for leadership, and it then takes away from the work of the group. And usually, at least in my experiences, if there's nobody there guiding the group, it kind of gets lost, okay? And so that's why it's so important, unless, again, you have somebody who takes over the group and is, everybody relies on that person. It's so important to have an outside ear who can say, no, you've got to do it this, you got to do it this way, because we can't hear, right? Even though we're trying to listen to each other, we don't know what it sounds like out there unless there's somebody standing there. Which is why, especially in a high school situation, you do need a strong person who can say, hey, okay, a little bit back here, okay, can't hear you back here, give you tips, because you can't hear yourself. And then in college, it's a whole different thing. So if you don't have a good foundation that you get here with somebody guiding you, how are you, as a singer, going to take that experience and make it work in the college level, or even professional level, right? Straight no chaser, right? For instance, there are people that actually made careers out of this. Right?
Yeah.
So it all starts here, but you need somebody to, help you listen and help guide you.
Yeah, and just the importance of a good director who can do that. In high school, you're figuring out who you are, kind of where you fit into the scheme
Right,
of things.
right.
So where you fit into a group like this is just so foundational in finding your sense of identity.
Yeah, yeah.
You're here.
And one thing I'll say about you can hear this as everybody's talking. I've only been to 2 of the different reunions, but the thing that happens when you walk in is you feel everybody having this high level of expectation. It's just a 2-day thing, but this high level of expectation it takes us right back to where we were when we were practicing. It's really fun that way because you come in and we're all like, yeah, we got this high expectation to do like we did back then, and I think that just lives with us because we had such a good satisfaction of what we got out of that high expectation. Well, yeah, we want to have that high expectation again.
Yes, and some of us have talked about it this weekend, but one of the really cool things about reunions and why octet reunions are the most special of all. When you come back to an octet reunion, you want it to be excellent, everybody wants it to, and you bang out stuff and you practice for a number of days, you put the stuff together, just like when you were here, you have the anxiety before the performance, then you do the performance, and in most cases, it's worthy, and you get a feeling that you really can go home again.
Right.
We come
That's
back,
true.
and it is an extremely similar experience to what we all had eons ago.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that is incredibly special.
Yes.
The school gave us there were 2 songs that they wanted us to do. How many have we done this weekend? 7?
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that was on our own. Right. That was on our
Just
own.
for ourselves.
Right.
I mean, I was hoping we could take this group on the road and start doing some shows with them. I'm like, how can we do all this work and then we don't get to, show it off? There was something I was saying before, and others should add to this because they know more than I. But we have some folks here who have sung professionally and remain very involved in music, and others of us have remained involved in different ways. Maybe not singing, but playing. Like me, I play guitar, and but the thing I wanted to mention was that we have a former octet member, who went on to sing at the Met and had a very accomplished career, both at the Met and in other settings, singing some very major roles in productions. Not all of us can go on and do that, but the fact that that this experience was, and it really was for him formative. It was this experience that propelled him into that career.
He wasn't thinking of that at all.
He wasn't.
I knew his family. My family was very close to his family, and that wasn't even. And then when he got into it, and George might know a little more because he had an octet year with him, but I think he discovered that he could do something even much more than he ever thought.
I've told people through the years, telling them a little bit about the octet experience, and I always mention the fact, the first 2 years I was in the first 2 octets, I had the absolute privilege and pleasure to be with John Brink and Andy Wenzel. And I've kidded all of you in the years since at these octet reunions and said, I taught them both everything I knew in 2 years, and then you have to let them fly away. But I'm telling you, and that, especially the 69 Dennis Forney was here earlier, and unfortunately he's already left. That was, and we put a record out that year too, and I listened to it, it still holds up extremely well, and that was a magnificent octet. And two of the guys, you know, have been musicologists all their lives.
Yeah, I
on a
mean-
very high level.
Yeah, it's like you catch lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
Right? And it happens like every decade or something like that. I mean, you had the 69 group. The other group we can talk about is what, the 81 group?
Yep.
The 81 group where a bunch of guys got together on a Saturday morning in the chapel
Yep.
with a boom box and then just hit record. And then they just hit pause. And then they hit unpause. And they went through the whole concert. And it is one of the most incredible things you will ever hear. You guys have a copy of it someplace. But yeah, that's what makes this the mystique of the octet, right? I mean, like I said, you're going to have good years, you're going to have bad years. But then all of a sudden, when you catch something, it's like, wow, these kids are what? 14, 15, 16, and they're doing this.
Yeah.
And it sounds, wait a minute, I hear college groups or professional groups doing this, you know? So it doesn't happen all the time, but that's what you want to catch. You want to catch it in a bottle.
Well, related to George's comments about Andy Wenzel, Andy and I have kept in touch through the years, and I sent him a lot of solo material that I did in the studio, primarily just guitar and vocal. And he kept saying, will you please get together with some other musicians and do something? So I finally did it. I'm inherently lazy and a procrastinator. So I got together a fundraiser cabaret in Chambersburg and did a variety of songs, a violinist, a pianist, and a bass player. I play guitar. I play and sing at the same time, which can be very challenging. And the first one I did, without my knowledge, was recorded, and I'm mailing one to Andy. This was a few years ago now. But I got a very worthwhile CD out of it that I could sell if I wanted to. And two of the songs are originals, and the others are covers of James Taylor, George Gershwin. And I brought along a copy for everyone to have before they leave.
Look at that. Wow.
It's live. There's no do-overs, there's no pitch. Right. No adjustments.
We can take that hard
And
stuff.
Andy,
We can take that hard
he
stuff.
used to get so angry. He says, "You've got such a great voice.
Yeah.
What are you doing just sitting in the studio? Get some musicians."
At one of the octet reunions that Andy attended, I got together and was talking to him for a few minutes, and I was specifically bringing up the fact that 68 octet and the fact that he and John were in it, and he was saying, John sends me a lot of stuff, and he goes, I play this for my wife, and we both love it, and I look at her and say, he's never had any formal training. I mean, it's just lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
Later in life, I did take some
Yeah.
vocal instruction because I've done a fair amount of musical theater, and sometimes the theaters take risks where there's no understudy. So you must maintain your health. You're in bed 10 hours at a time, you exercise, you eat right, and on a Broadway run, you do 8 shows a week. If you're not taking care of yourself, you're gonna be in real trouble real fast.
Right. Right.
You can lose well, I haven't lost my voice in ages, but it can happen.
Yeah. But I mean, I just think the overall, enhancement of the music department here is, I mean, if I'd been here at this time with the talent that I had when I first came to Mercersburg, I wouldn't have made the octet. I wouldn't have made it.
Chet, Josh, and I were, luckier in that when we were here, the arts there was definitely more of an emphasis on the arts at that point. We didn't have this amazing space
Right,
at that point,
right.
but there still were a number of ensembles, a number of groups. But what was really special is, we would be, and I forget who was talking about this earlier today, but this was kind of our own special private time that we got out of study hall and we got to go rehearse, in the evenings, and just have this bonding experience. But then also, on the flip side, going out and serenading to the girls' dorms.
Right.
And, whether it was just our star power or the fact that it would get them out of study hall, 15 minutes early, they would come running down the hallways, cram into their common rooms, and we'd do a short show. And it was just
When you talk about the music is paramount, and accuracy in the music is paramount, but the camaraderie that stretches across the ages from 47 until now. I have a great illustration of that because I had a CD, snippets of pieces that I wanted to send to Robin Grossman, who was Robin Thomas was his stage name. You've actually probably seen him somewhere, but anyhow, he graduated in '67, and along about, I'm going to guess here a little bit, along about 2010 or 2012, I thought, I'd like Robin Grossman to hear what I'm doing and give me, I send him a CD, will you please listen to it, tell me what you think. So I called, but I didn't mention Mercersburg. I just said, Robin, it's John Brink. Now, I'm not seeing the man for about 35 years. He was on a movie set in Halifax, shooting a movie with Kathy Bates, and he called me that afternoon. He said, yes, please send it. And, without that Octet connection, it was just, obviously,
Right.
that was not right.
Right.
And he was just one of my great memories. It's sort of Octet related, but I remember Robin Thomas Grossman doing Lawrence of Arabia here at Mercersburg Academy, and it was stunning. It was absolutely professional.
Wow.
But he went to Carnegie Mellon and became a sculptor for a while.
Oh, okay.
Then he just decided to get back into acting, so he started doing showcases.
Wow.
Another
Amazing.
World, Matlock, Law and Order,
Wow.
cool guy.
Wow. My best memory of the octet was coming from a very classical background, learning another style of music, several styles of music, and then also singing a cappella, which is something I never did prior to that. And also working with a group of people and then listening and reacting to the group of people. That was my favorite memory, the camaraderie, the making the music together with the different style of music that was totally foreign to me at the time.
Yeah. And I'll share a life lesson from my senior concert. The experiences you have in a group like this, just sharing and the listening, can't say enough, can't duplicate that thought enough. You learn to hear, you learn to take suggestions from others. But by my senior year, I'd been a 4-year octetter. Senior year was Mr. Bassman, and I've always been a bass, and it was my big solo, and it starts out, ba 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 ba, So I was going to make this big entrance, and start with my back to the audience, and spin around with the ba-bas.
Spin around.
And I thought it'd be cool to wear some dark shades, right? Dark glasses.
Right.
So up comes my moment. I spin around to start the song, and the glasses go flying into the audience.
Totally flying.
And it just reminded me of who, of who I
Right,
was. It was a
exactly.
very humbling moment.
Yes, humbling,
And
totally.
I've taken that on
Yeah.
through life.
Yes,
No matter how
yes.
well things are going,
Yeah.
there are other people that know better, and they're worth listening to.
Right.
And it was just, like I said, I'm not a very good speaker, but the life lessons have lasted my whole life.
Yeah,
There you go.
that's true. I think that sense of being humble is pretty important to everyone. You just don't know that when you're younger, and I think that being in an organization like singing like this and recognizing that it's a compromise game, it's not your show. That was a teaching of humbling about, that's how life should be dealt with, really.